Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Born and Bred podcast.
In this season, we talk to some of Northern Ireland's greatest sporting heroes.
Kaboom!
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Born and Bred podcast, Season 2. Today, our guest is someone who I would probably struggle to do justice to the career of and the legacy to. So we're going to try and tap into it as much as we can. We're delighted to have a sporting legend and icon with us today, Lady Mary Peters. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Honestly, we tried so hard to think of an intro that would do you justice, and we said there's no words, so we'll just try and cover as much as we can.
You can tell it yourself.
Happy to be with you.
So we were just talking before about the concept of this podcast. It's called Born and Bred. So we're obviously trying to tap into people's born and bred stories, and so tell us a little bit about yourself and, you know, where you come from and a little bit of the early stages of your career.
Well, I was born in Halewood near Liverpool, and funnily enough, my great nephew came from Australia for trials with Everton, and I went over to see him. He was 11, and it was just a mile from where I was born, where the Everton training ground is. So, and I was standing on the barrier watching the kids playing, and this man came along and he said, "Have you come home, Mary?" And that was 70 plus years after I'd left. But it was a little rural area, and there were only boys in our road. So I was a tomboy because my brother, who was 3 years older, and two local guys, we used to play in the fields and climb over the bales in the field, and I used to run after my brother saying, "Wait for me." And then my dad was moved to Belfast for a couple of years, and it's a bit like the Belfast story in reverse, you know, the wonderful film, because he came home every fortnight, and one weekend he came home, and I knew there was something going on because the dining room door had been closed, and I sat on the stairs and listened, and he was telling my mum that we were coming to live in Northern Ireland, and I was like, because all my friends and family. Yeah. So that was at the age of 11, and we came over and came to Ballymena.
Okay.
And that was a shock in itself.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I was trying to make that sound nice. But
I couldn't understand a word anybody said, and not the teachers. So I had to have a friend sit beside me and tell me what
an
the teachers
interpreter.
That's brilliant. And I was quite big for my age. You know, I was always quite tall, and because I'd been sporty with my brother, I was quite well built, and all the girls used to come and knock on the door and say, "Is the wee girl coming out to play?" And I made great friends in those days, and my best friend is a girl called Elizabeth O'Kane, whose family owned the chicken factory ultimately. And Liz and I are still great friends this day. So, you know, 70 plus years on, we're still great friends. And after a couple of years in Ballymena, we moved to Portadown, and that was, again, a horrendous change in your life. At that age, I was 14 and going into fourth form and having to make new friends and living in a new town. And loved school there. The headmaster was English, so he took a special liking to me, which was helpful. And I wasn't very academic, but he recognised that I had some sporting prowess, and one day I was trying to play cricket very badly one day, and he came across and he said, "Mary, come with me," and took me to where the boys were doing athletics, and it changed my life forever.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I assume you were probably the only girl?
Was
the only?
But it was great.
Yeah.
That's where you wanted to be. So was that, so the athletics was a male sport in school? Was that the way
very
it was?
much was.
Yeah.
And we only did school sports. You know, there was the 100, 200 yards, the high jump and long jump. That was all in school in those days. And then because I was winning everything, because I was quite fit and bigger than most, my dad started taking me to other athletic events. And there was a whole program of things. And the coach that was coaching the boys said to me one day, "Would you like to try a pentathlon?" And I said, "What's that?" Yeah. And he explained there'd never been a pentathlon held in Ireland, that you did the events that I did anyway, but also you had to do the hurdles and the shot put. So we tried both. My dad made me some hurdles out of wood. Yeah. And within weeks of putting the shot, I was breaking the Northern Ireland record. Wow. Because like you, I had good shoulders.
That's why she got them out today, because she wanted to be
intimidated next to you.
I said,
very impressed, but you'll still have it when you're 84. But so I started breaking the records, but they always weighed the shot afterwards to make sure it was valid. And of course, the shot was a bit light.
Yeah, right.
So my dad went to the local foundry and got one made for me in Portadown, which was correct, so that I could take that with me and therefore get the records.
Wow.
But he also put a shot circle in the field behind our house, and it was the first cement shot circle in Ireland.
Wow.
And he made the wooden board for me. So shot put became quite a strong event for me. But at 16, I competed against Thelma Hopkins, who was a world record high jumper, and Maeve Kyle, who was a hockey international, but also ran the 200 and 400 meters. She was an international. And I was 16 and I came third. So people started marking me as maybe a future athlete. And I just loved it. And the two strongest events in my pentathlon became the hurdles and the shot.
The two that you'd never done before.
Yeah. So I would say to young people who are trying sport, try as many as you can. You don't know where your forte is. It may be soccer, but it might be hockey, or it might be swimming, or, try everything before you make a decision on which sport you would like to go with.
Well, that's it, because you never know what you might be good at, like you, until you try it. That's fascinating, isn't it?
I know, I always sort of think, like, imagine you've just sort of missed out on something. There's something, you could have a real talent for something, but you just never go and try it, and you'll never know. But you could go to the Olympics as, like, I don't know, I could be like an ice hockey player, and I just don't know that I have that talent because I never picked up a stick.
Yeah.
But there are people who do that. They change sport halfway through their careers, which is great. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So then obviously that was like your early stages. So then what came next?
Well, I began to progress through becoming a Northern Ireland athlete, and was going to the British Championships, and there were girls from all over England, but there were very few from Northern Ireland that ever made that journey. And I was spotted as a shot putter, funnily enough, which I didn't enjoy because it's very unfeminine, but but I was good at it. And the lady who was team manager of the British team had an athletic club called Spartan Ladies, and you could become an extra member. You could have a club here, but also go for a British team, British club. And she invited me to join a team of athletes that were going to Holland to meet other teams over there. And I was delighted because it was my first kind of foray into traveling. And I did so well in the shot put that I was selected for Great Britain in an international against Germany at White City in London. And that's where my journey of international sport really took off. Although I had competed at the Commonwealth Games for Northern Ireland in 1958 in Cardiff, which was the first of 5 Commonwealth Games. And I was, I think, 8th out of 9 in the high jump and 9th out of 10 in the shot put. And our relay team got through to the final because somebody else dropped a baton. So when I was passing the baton to Maeve Kyle, who was the sprinter of the team with a high jumper and javelin thrower, the England team were breaking the world record at the other end of the track, 100 yards difference. So that was humiliating, but at least we'd made a final.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the actual living in a village and being part of that whole atmosphere, like you going to the Euros, I mean, it must have changed your lives forever, because you're seeing teams that were professional and that were way ahead of our development in women's soccer here. And I was so pleased to go to Southampton and see your first game. Sadly, you
I know.
don't know. But
I know.
the atmosphere and the support that you got was absolutely amazing.
And I think it's one of them things as well. See, once you get a taste of that once, you want it again and you want it again. So, and I know, unfortunately, from a personal point of view, I got my injury, but I'm like, that is not my only experience at a major tournament. Like, we have to do it again. And I suppose it's similar to you. Once you get a taste of that once, I mean, look at what you went on to go and do then.
Well, you see, queuing up for breakfast and somebody who won a gold medal yesterday, and you're looking over your shoulder and you're thinking, I could be them one day, It's the friendships you make and the opportunities of travel, and it gives you good health. You enjoy life more because you're out there doing things. But I was teaching. I went on to become a domestic science teacher, and it was very difficult for me to get away from school to go and do these international meetings. In the days that I'm talking about, in the 60s, we used to have an international match nearly every weekend. It would be in London or in Holland or in Germany or in America or wherever. You were away almost every weekend. Well, you were missing half of Friday and you went home till half of Monday. So the director of education didn't like having to pay somebody to cover for me.
Yeah.
So it became very difficult, and I decided that I would give up. When I was selected for the Tokyo Olympics in 1964, I would give up teaching so that I could follow my dream, which was to enjoy sport, never, ever dreaming that I would ever get to the top, but just loving the aspect of which I've described, of travel and so on. I decided that I would give it a miss, and I went to work for my coach who had a health club in Belfast. So, but my head mistress was wonderful, and she wanted me to continue teaching, which I enjoyed, but you can't do everything.
No.
And I'm glad I gave it up, because although education missed something special.
And during that time when you had to make that decision, was that a really hard decision for you at the time?
Oh, absolutely, because, I trained for 3 years, and I had no stability or future, and I didn't get any sponsorship in those days. I had to pay for most things myself. If I was traveling internationally, obviously the accommodation and travel were covered. But if you were going for competition, you just paid your own way. And
so it was a big risk to take that. Yeah, when you had a stable job, it's like a big leap of faith you're taking, and you're kind of banking on, I hope this really works out.
That's right. And I feel very sad for you girls that you got 6 months of funding from the IFA and then it all dried up. Why? You need the support to develop for the next Euros and the future of the game. And look how you've inspired so many young people to get involved. It's just amazing.
No, I know. And I think it's like all of us women in sport, especially from such a small country. When I look back at whenever I was even a young girl, and I know I was always football mad, like football was always the one for me. And I look at the opportunities I had then, but now I look at my niece and I look at the opportunities she has, and the world is her oyster if she wants it to be. And it's because of people like yourselves who are paving the way and breaking down these barriers and, instilling pathways. I just think it's fantastic, and it's going to keep getting better and getting better. And
it is, and at least you're covered in the newspapers now.
Well, that's it. Yes,
you used to get 2 columns or 2 lines even.
Yeah,
but you still didn't see it as a career path. You took that risk, and
I still
give up the job. But
and worked a 48-hour week, but it gave me time during the day. Sometimes, if I was working at night, that I could go and do some training at the track or wherever. But my big change in life was when we came back from the Commonwealth Games. My coach, who had been there as a weightlifter, wrote to us all and all the athletes and said, the way to go is to get fit with weights, and I would be happy to have you come to the gym and train free. So a whole crowd of us went, but gradually they all dropped out, but there were 3 girls left, and we kept going. And then Buster McShane, who was my coach, he recognised that I wasn't making the progress that he thought I should, and offered his help in training me at the track as well. He was a great reader and had done a lot of research into nutrition and about weight training. So he took me to, funnily enough, just down the road here to Omo Park to put the shot. And the shot circle was full of water and leaves, and we got somebody to sweep it up. And he started helping me, and he took a clean white handkerchief out of his pocket to wipe the shot, which was full of mud when it landed in the...
Every time, yeah.
which impressed me at the time. And then he started just helping me develop my skills. And so in 64 in Tokyo was the first time the pentathlon was in the program. And I was... along with a girl called Mary Rand, who was the golden girl of that era. And she had great talent as a long jumper and also as a sprinter. And we were against 2 Russians who disappeared after we had femininity tests.
Oh, wow.
Right, okay, yeah.
Subsequently, but Irina Press was the favourite, but they were very butch and pushing us out of the way, and I was trying to support Mary because I knew she had a better chance of doing well than I had. So I finished 4th in those Olympics, which, being 4th in the world,
First Olympics,
was quite amazing.
Incredible, yeah.
And so I enjoyed that so much I wanted more. And so subsequently I went to Commonwealth Games and Mexico Olympics, where I got injured. And then coming up to 1970 Commonwealth Games, which were in Edinburgh, the pentathlon was the first time in the Commonwealth programme. So my coach and I sat down and we decided I'd win that and the shot put.
Decided, yep, that's
you do.
it.
So I started training really hard. I was still working full time, and I did win both of those. And, I'd been afraid of success. I didn't know how it would change my life. I felt people would be jealous of my success. And after I'd failed at the Commonwealth Games in Jamaica, where I was favourite to win and only got the silver medal. My coach said to me, if you are going to take an attitude of, when you go home to Belfast, people will still like me. If you continue that kind of attitude, you're never going to go anywhere. So you've got to make a decision. So I did make up my mind that I liked it enough that I wanted to continue. And at those games, having won those 2 medals, just lifted my whole profile, but also my desire for success, because people shared it with me. They weren't jealous. They were keen to help and support. So I took a year's rest and then decided on the 2nd of September, which was going to be the date I was competing in Munich, went to Crystal Palace and watched all these people doing this new high jump style, the Fosbury flop. And I was 32 by then. Which isn't a good age to start doing things acrobatic, backwards over the bar. So watched...
previously you could jump over it forwards?
Yes.
The way that whatever way you wanted, just get over it.
As long as you take off on one leg.
Right.
Yes, and this man called Dick Fosbury had decided that he would try it. And then everybody now does the Fosbury flop. Nobody does any other style. But I had never tried it before. And we were sitting watching, and Buster had an old videotape or Sunny tape and filmed it. And then he said to me, when everybody had finished, he said, go and put your things on and go and have a try. And I jumped higher than I'd ever jumped before.
First time? Wow.
So we realised, and it was the strength of my legs with all the weight training that I'd done that was able to get me over the bar. So we started training really hard. I applied for a Churchill Fellowship, which allowed me to go to America for 6 weeks to train. And there was opposition because of my age and because I'd had the success at the Commonwealths, but not any great success. But they put their faith in me and gave me £800, and I was able to go and train for 6 weeks. And of course, we had such bad weather here. It's always raining, or it always seemed to be raining.
Yeah, no, you're right.
You play out of season, so you get the better month.
The luxury.
But you see on a cold winter's day and maybe snowing, and you're trying to high jump onto a very wet high jump bed. Not very nice.
No indoor arenas.
Grinding a shot into your neck, which is full of grit from landing in the... Anyway, so... When I went to America, I stayed with a man called Bill Pearl, who was Mr. Weightlifter, bodybuilder, Mr. Universe, and his wife. And I trained in their gym, but I also had a school and a university not too far away that had synthetic surfaces, because we didn't have a good surface here for me to train on. And I overtrained because I worked full-time when I was at home, and to have all day and every day, I overtrained and hurt my Achilles. So I was distraught, but Buster flew out and recognised that I had a problem with one of the shoes I was wearing was rubbing on my Achilles. So we threw those away, gave it a couple of days rest, and started training again. And I came home after 6 weeks and went to an event in Edinburgh and jumped 5'10" in the high jump. And my previous best in competition had been about 5'8". So I knew that things were going well.
Give you the lift that you needed,
And then in Munich, I did 4 out of 5 personal bests in the competition, and jumped 5'11" in the high jump. I mean, it was the first time in my life I had an audience, because people stayed to watch, because it went on late into the night. So that was a life-changing experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Just going to Munich then, that leads us nicely into that. So going into it, were your expectations now, this is kind of it for me? Because of your age, you were like, this is probably my last Olympic Games, my last chance at medaling.
Yeah, so I had worked every single day of that year with that thought in mind that I could win. And when I went to Munich, I was 5th in the rankings. And Heidi Rosendahl, who was the local girl who was nearest in competition to me, her coach said to me that morning when we were warming up, "Your favourite, you're number 1." And I went, oh. And Heidi and I knew each other, but I didn't know the girl who eventually came 3rd, who was called Glinda Pollock, who was the European champion. And I had a slight apprehension about her because I didn't know her. So I went around the village until I found her with some of her mates, and I realised that she wasn't as honed as you are. You know, there was a kind of a puffiness about her.
Yes.
So I dismissed her and thought, no, I can beat her.
Took one look at her.
No, brilliant.
So the first race is the hurdles, and you had to present your spikes that you were wearing, and Puma, the company whose shoes I wore, no funding, of course, in those days.
No sponsors.
You get 100,000 now if you're wearing their shoes. But anyway, they had brought out these new, there were wedges on the bottom of the soles instead of spikes. And I knew some of the other athletes had worn them, but the officials dismissed them and wouldn't let me wear them. But I had been well prepared and had my spikes.
Oh, you did, yeah. It's like you just knew.
It would have been disaster. So I ran nearly as fast as I'd ever run before, and had got the second fastest time. And for a few minutes, it was an Olympic record, because in the next heat somebody did a wee bit faster, but that was really good start. And then you have to go away and get ready for your next event, which was the shot put. And I won that out of hand because it was my strongest event. And then we had to go away and back to the village and hang around all day waiting for the high jump in the evening. And as I said, I jumped out of my skin. And then I had to go back and try and get a night's sleep, knowing that I had my 2 weak events the second day, whereas Heidi Rosendahl had her 2 stronger events. Yeah. She won a long jump, a gold medal, and she was also in the German relay team, so she was a very good sprinter. 200, yeah. So the long jump, I did an average jump, something that I had difficulty with. In fact, when Heidi was over in the summer to celebrate my 50th anniversary, she said, I could have showed you how to long jump, but then you wouldn't have won the gold medal. And Jim Neely interviewed her one afternoon, and he said to her, have you ever forgiven Mary for beating you? And she went, no. But she jumped out of her skin, and the points in a pentathlon, it's the points on how good you are at each event. So if you jump a centimetre more, you get maybe another 50 points. So it was vital to gain every point
Fine
that you
margin.
could along the way. So when we'd finished that, I knew from my coach that I had to run faster in the last race than I'd ever run before. And I was 33 by then. But I ran scared and ran just enough that I won the whole competition after 5 events by a tenth of a second.
Oh my.
Talk about fine margin. Wow. But like one thing that really like fascinates me about it, because I suppose it's different for us, like we play 90 minutes and that's it. That's spread out over such a long, what must feel like an eternity. Like how mentally do you cope with that?
It wasn't easy.
Yeah.
I was very emotional after the long jump, because I went back to my room and the girl who was opposite me came over and she said, "Are you okay?" And I started to cry. And she said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "Because I want to win." And she said, "But you've got a medal anyway." I said, "I don't just want a medal, I want the gold." So it was, it is emotional, and it's because of all the experience of all the other Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games that built up that confidence of knowing that you can do it and you want to do it. I'd never had that great desire until the Commonwealth Games in 70 to win, because I just thought life would change so much, but it changed for the better, which, I would say to everybody, enjoy it, which I did. I loved it and loved the homecoming, obviously. And I'm still celebrating 51 years old.
And like you were never coached about that sort of being in that scenario, and you're not taught about mindset and how you deal with all of that. It was just you had on your own, you just had to deal with that in your own head.
My coach used to take me by the arm and he'd squeeze it and he'd say, "That was good, but you can do better." And, the long, lonely days at the track when it's pouring with rain or snowing and you're there and you have to make the effort to do it on your own. At least if you're with a team as you have, you can find strength from each other. And but I've made so many good friends out of the sport and have not one moment's regret.
And did you ever feel like, did you put a lot of pressure on yourself going into the Olympics in 72? Yeah. Or did you feel a lot of pressure externally as well? Like, how did you deal with that?
Well, I did put a lot of pressure on myself, but more my coach was putting pressure on me because he wanted me to have the success, and he never got any payment or any reward for it. And in fact, I've put a seat at the track, and the citation says, "In memory of Buster McShane, who made an average athlete into an Olympic champion," because he did. He made me believe that I was capable of it. Forgotten the question now, sorry.
Just about dealing with expectation and pressure.
Before I went to Munich, I didn't talk about what I was going to do. A lot of athletes get strength, like Reese McLenaghan saying, "I'm going to do this." I didn't talk about it too much, but a group of journalists took me out for dinner one night in the Europa before I went. And I'm ashamed to tell you this, but I have to tell you because it's part of my story. As I was sitting there drinking gin and tonics and smoking.
I love it. It's all coming out now, isn't
it? They said to me, "How good do you think you're going to do?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to win." And they went, yeah. And you see, I was still a pure amateur. I worked full time. I had no sponsorship, or I'd had that scholarship, but no help from anybody. But I said I was going to go and win. And they were all so skeptical. But, if you believe in yourself, you can find extra strength along the way. And I wanted to do it for myself, but also Belfast was going through the worst of the troubles. 1972, there were over 500 people who were killed that year. And that was pressure of me wanting something good to come out of Belfast.
Yeah.
And it was good news because people still stop me and say, "I remember where I was when you were doing that in Munich."
Unbelievable, yeah.
And they can remember. It's like when Jack Kennedy died. The people remember where they were. It's when all sorts of tragic events happen, people remember. But happily for me, people remember a good night.
Well, it would have been a shining light in a really dark period for the country. So what a thing to have.
I know.
You must feel amazing when people come up and say those sorts of things to you.
So then Malcolm Brodie, who was the sports editor of the Telegraph, he would love your story, girls, because he went to something like 14 World Cups covering the men, you know.
Yeah.
So, Malcolm wrote an article the night I had my success, and he said to me, the people of Belfast would like to do something to honour your victory. What would you like? And foolishly, I said a track. Because the one I'd trained on was full of potholes and really bad order. So they started the fun that night. And when I came home, we had all these flags saying, "Welcome home, Mary," and also advertising that we were collecting money for the track. So it took me 3 years of my life when I wasn't working to raise the money to build it. But after about 6 months, my coach was killed in a car accident, which was tragic. And I decided that was the end of my sporting career. I couldn't go on without him. Mm-hmm. But I was training with Mike Bull at the time, who was a British international pole vaulter. Mm-hmm. And we decided that we would go to the next Commonwealth Games to honour Buster's memory, and that he would win the decathlon, which is 10 events, and I would win the pentathlon.
Again, just decided you were going to go. I'm
going to win that.
So it gave me an opportunity to raise the profile of the fundraising for and I had raised about £500 by then, which is like I suppose 50,000 in today's money. But when I was out in New Zealand at these Commonwealth Games, I met John Moores, who owned Littlewood's football pools. Mm-hmm. And he said, "I know you're collecting money for a track. When you go home, write to me." And he sent me 5,000.
Oh, wow.
So that was, a big boost to the fundraising. And Mike and I won our medals. So again, it was an opportunity to publicise the track. And after 3 years, we had enough money that we were able to build a synthetic track at Queen's University, and it's been such a success. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But then I was approached by another John Moores, who was a businessman from Coleraine, to say, "You were lucky enough to get a scholarship to go to America. How would you like to set up a trust to help the next generation of young people?" Mm-hmm. So that's over 40 years ago.
Yeah.
We've helped over 4,000 athletes realise their dream. Mary Peters Trust.
Yeah, well, that was obviously where we were heading. It was kind of then the legacy after your success and inspiring and starting careers for many other sporting advocates in the country. So talk to us about the trust.
Well, there's so many young people in this country playing sport at an average level, but there are sparks of gems who come through, like you girls, that are our future, the future of the country, but also the future of encouraging young people to do sport. So in the early days, we were only able to give a few £100 away because we had to start collecting money, obviously, to be able to, you only have to collect money to be able to give it away. Yeah. And one of the first people was Ian Corrie, who was a young swimmer in those days. And he'd lost his dad, who died early, and he had a number of siblings. And he went with me to Christchurch for the Commonwealth Games. And Ian now has just retired as a major orthopaedic surgeon. Oh, but people like Ian have helped us along the way. We've helped Jimmy Kirkwood and Stephen Martin, who won gold medals in the Seoul Olympics in hockey. We've helped Carl Frampton on his career, Paddy Barnes, lovely naughty Paddy. Yeah. Stephanie Meadows, who's a world known golf player, and also Leona Maguire. She and her twin sister, were playing very good golf at the age of 12, and now Leona's one of the best in the world. So when you see people like that traveling the world as I did and representing us in an ambassadorial role, but enjoying their sport, and like you girls, inspiring the next generation to take part in sport. We want to make that major, that nobody in this country is ever deprived of the opportunity of being good at their sport, which they love. And, sometimes in families, it's not easy for parents to get them to go all over the world to compete because it's a lot of finance for them. We had a young Lisa Bradley who was a judo player, and she had to go to so many countries to qualify for the 2012 Olympics as a judo player. Her parents mortgaged their home to give her that opportunity.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Now she only was in competition for a few minutes, but she's an Olympian. Yeah. And she went on to the next Commonwealth Games to get a bronze medal in judo. And she's now, I believe, coaching. So you've helped that young lady realize a dream. She didn't quite make it to the top, which she might have if things had been different. But at least she's putting back now and helping another generation. So our inspiration is to help as many as we can to make it to the top and help others in the future.
Yeah, well, that's it. Nearly every great, sporting legend has had help along the way. Yes, and that's essentially what the trust is doing. It's giving people that help because, like you say, so much goes into making it. You have to get a lucky break along the way with hard work, but nearly everyone has got somewhere because somebody's helped them.
That's right.
And there's that element of risk of we could put everything into this and it might not turn out exactly the way that, we hope. We might not get to the top, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a failure. And you talked about, all of that expectation and everything, and what if I let everybody down? And, that can really affect you and get into your head. But, it all comes down to like how you define success ultimately in the end. And if it's just a gold medal, well then it's not everybody's going to be able to achieve that. Obviously only one person gets it at the end of the day.
And there are so many countries now taking part in the Olympics. It's much more difficult. But the hockey girls that did so well in the Worlds and got the silver medal, and then they went off to the Olympics in Tokyo. Those girls are now coaching or still playing maybe. I have a great niece in Australia that I've just returned from 6 weeks visiting family and friends, and Alana has been picked for the Jillaroos, which are the young hockey players of Australia, but the Jackaroos are the actual team, and she was invited to a training camp, and she was disappointed that she hadn't been selected to join the Jackaroos just yet, but she's playing against Japan in Australia this week. And I had an email from my brother this morning to say that she's been added to the list of the Jackaroos. So it's possible that she might compete in Paris in 1924.
Wow.
In 2024.
Oh, amazing.
So that would be a nice trip for me to go and see her.
Well, absolutely. I think though as well, what's lovely to see is just the opportunities, not even just for sporting success, but the other pathways and avenues that women are now going into in sport. There's broadcast and media, and it's opening up so many doors so that if people, want to try and make it, but they don't quite make it, but they can go into coaching or media.
Or physio or becoming doctors that are... there's so many opportunities for you young ladies to pursue. And this is a wonderful opportunity, doing a podcast with you, and I'm so pleased to have this opportunity.
Well, I'm just really glad that you made the trip over from Halewood because, if your dad hadn't have moved over to Belfast, dear knows where you would have been.
Who knows what I would have been.
I actually lived in Halewood for a period because I played for Everton.
Oh, did you?
And obviously Finch Farm is in Halewood. So whenever we were driving in on the way, I was like, oh, I lived in Halewood. I completely forgot that I lived there.
That is amazing.
It's just such a small world that way.
Well, the lovely heptathlete, can't think of her name. The double-barreled name. She was born in Halewood as well.
Oh, yes.
And I met her and she said, why are you wearing red?
Well, that's it. It's one or the other there, isn't it? Suppose to to sort of like wrap it up, obviously you've been there and you've done it. If you had any advice to give to any young listener, or just any listener who doesn't even just have to be sport, it can be anything, what would you say to somebody?
Enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Most important thing always is enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, no point in doing it. But persevere and persist. Things happen for a reason, and if you don't try, you'll never know.
Brilliant. That's lovely. Well, honestly, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honour for us to have you on the podcast and listen to your story.
Been a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.